Now, northern Israel was split because of, there in the 11th chapter of 1 Kings, because of Solomon's apostasy. So the kingdom was split, and out of northern Israel came Ahab. Now they had been involved in Baal in the Grove, but never had it become the national religion of northern Israel. Never had it become that. So it was due to their apostasy that it finally bled down into the southern Judah when Ahab was running around Jehoshaphat, and Jehoram sees this good-looking girl at one of the parties, and he sees this Athaliah, and so he marries her. He doesn't know he's marrying the devil's sister, when he does that. Watch out. If you think you're going to go out there and marry Miss America, she might be sister of the devil. They usually are. So northern Israel, God says, I've had my fill of northern Israel. When he gets down to Hoshea, man, this is a bloodbath through here. They got one man in here I had any trust in. It was Jehu, but he kind of dropped the ball at the end of his life, and we've gone through that. These were a bunch of wicked guys here in northern Israel. Or, let me keep saying it, Ephraim. And when Ahab and Jezebel brought Jezebel's father's gods, the sun god and the tree goddess, into Israel, it don't matter. What's so funny? People say, well, that's not the Christmas tree. What's so amazing? Here's the Mediterranean Sea, and here's Israel on the, looks like an ear, doesn't it? Something like that. Okay, and here's the Gaza Strip. There's the Sea of Galilee. There's the Jordan River. Here's the Dead Sea. And here's Mediterranean. And here is what we call Lebanon. May I remind you, Lebanah. Lebanah was one of the words for moon in the scriptures, out of the scriptures. Moon, and that word Lebanon means moon. These were moon worshippers. So Ahab marries Jezebel, the prince of Tyre, which is Ethbaal. And there's two men equated with the devil all through Scripture. And you've got Syria up here, or Syria here, Syria. And then you've got Jordan here. Jordan, or it is actually the land of Ammon in the ancient world, and the land of Moab. And then you got the Arabian Desert out here, Arab Desert. And then down here, you got the Persian Gulf here. Here's Kuwait in here. And it goes up here into what we call Iraq. And this river splits. And Iraq is here, and then you got Iran over here. Iran, this is ancient Persia. Persia. This is the Persian Mede Empire. Medes. And it goes over and takes in Afghanistan. And it takes in Pakistan. And that was ancient Pakistan. Gosh, I can't spell this close to the board. All right. Pakistan. This was all Persia. Can't draw either. Yes, this is all Persia out of the ancient world. It was the Persians that conquered the Babylonian Empire. Of course, Greece over here conquered the Persians. And this is the Euphrates River, and this is the Tigris River. And on the Tigris River, you've got what used to be Nineveh, which was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire, and they were a bunch of barbarians. And then on the Euphrates River, you've got Babylon, the city, which was the capital city of the Babylonian Empire that came in here and carried Israel into captivity. Well, people say, that's not the Christmas tree. Yeah, it is. And you can't trace that to Roman Catholicism. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Ethbaal was the father of Jezebel. He was the prince of Tyre. Tyre. I wrote it once. Twice won't matter. And Ethbaal, and if you'll notice, her name was Jezebel. Baal means confounder. Baal means the Lord. And they're related to one another. This is the Lord that was the confounder of Jezebel, Jezebel. And the words are kin, Baal and Baal. Well, she brought her gods, her father's gods, down into Israel, Baal in the Grove. And they had many other generic names. The Grove was Venus. Baal was Hercules. Hercules' birthday is December 25th, same as Mithras' birthday in Rome, December the 25th. Of course, there's reasons for that, and y'all know what they are. So, you can trace from Israel, from southern Judah. Finally, it came down in southern Judah when Jezebel and Ahab's daughter, Athaliah, marries down into southern Judah. She marries Jehoram, brings her gods down. You can trace it back up to northern Israel, back to Tyre and Sidon. You can trace it to Babylon because Ethbaal was a priest of Baal and a priest of the Ashtaroth, which is the female deities of Babylon. And Babylon mothered it all. And when Cyrus, the king of Persia, when the Persian king came in to conquer Babylon, Babylon had these gigantic walls, 400 feet high, and they said, we can't be conquered. And Cyrus said, he's thinking like Alexander the Great, Let me see. If I can't get over these 400-foot walls with a river running around them, how can I get in there? Oh, I got it. I'll divert the river out here into the desert, out here into the Arabian desert, and that'll hold 14 trillion rivers, with all that sand. Not just 1,400 trillion gallons. It'll hold all the rivers you want to run into it. So he runs it down here, marches down the riverbed, conquers Babylon, and the Chaldeans, which were the high priest of the Babylonian system, they were driven out, and they found a new place for their fire worship system. That was in Pergamos. And when you get into the second chapter of Revelation, the Bible speaks of Pergamos as the place where Satan dwelleth, where Satan's seat is. Well, look at it. Look at Revelation 2. And that's because historically, the fire worship found its way there. Look at Revelation 2. Now, some of what I'm giving you is history. The fact that when Cyrus drove it out, he drove the Chaldeans and their fire worship system out. That's what the Chaldeans were. And when they got over here to Pergamos, they renamed their Chaldean system the Etruscans. So whenever you're going to study it, when you leave Babylon, the Chaldeans, when you're going into some of your works, look up Etruscans. Now the Romans liked the magic of the Chaldeans. You remember Jannes and Jambres when Moses stood before them and he threw his serpent down? And they threw their serpents down, except theirs was sleight of hand. Moses' serpent ate up their serpents. Now, they couldn't figure out how to do that. They couldn't figure out how to do that. So the Chaldeans were magicians. Word magic means the science of the Magi or Magos. And the Magi were the wise men that came. And there were some wise men that would come from Babylon that were righteous men, because evidently those that came to see Jesus at the house where he wasn't in the manger when the wise men got there. He was in a house. Read that in the second chapter of Matthew. In your King James Bible, it says they came to the house where the young child was. He was not a babe in a manger. So the science of the Magi, they had mastered sleight of hand. Well, the Etruscans liked the Rome over here, the boot of Italy. Boy, it doesn't look like it, does it? Anyway, we just call it the boot of Italy. Rome's up here, and they loved, and here's Greece all up in here. Here's the Aegean Sea, and here is what we call Turkey. And they found their seat there in Pergamos. Look here. Look here. Look here. Huh? That was the Aegean Sea. Aegean, A-G-E-A-N. Then you go over here to the 12th verse of chapter 2 of Revelation. And John is writing to the 12 churches of Asia. And he's got a